Hey, how's it going, folks? Today I'm going to show you how you can pinpoint and find a dirty or clogged fuel injector. Now, the procedure for finding a dirty fuel injector is different from the procedure for finding a bad fuel injector. So today I'm going to show you both procedures, but not just that. I'm also going to show you how you can attempt to clean one of these by rigging up a DIY fuel injector cleaner that costs less than 10 bucks. So in order to find a dirty fuel injector, you'll need two things. First, a fuel pressure gauge, and second, a fuel injector tester, which looks like this. And no, there's no way around it. You'll need these two items, but fear none, these are not very expensive. Together, they might even cost less than a fuel injector. And as always, I put links to the tools and parts used in this video in the description box for you to check out. And no, these tool companies are not sponsoring this video. These are simply tools I like to use myself. Yeah, getting these is a no-brainer, especially when you consider on some cars, it's very difficult to actually get to the fuel injectors to replace all of them, not to mention the cost. But not just that, you want to make sure your problem is actually dirty or clogged fuel injectors before you spend the time and money trying to replace them. In so many words, buy the proper tools or learn how to correctly diagnose issues with your engine instead of you fix shit, goddammit. See what I did there? You don't want to throw parts at your problem is what I'm saying. Alright, now in order for you to understand why you exactly need this fuel injector tester, you're going to need a basic understanding of how the fuel injection system works on your car. So we're just going to take about 30 seconds and quickly go over how the fuel injection system on your car works on this whiteboard. And we'll start this at the fuel pump. This fella right in here. So the job of your fuel pump is to pump and maintain fuel pressure inside your fuel system all the way to the tip of your fuel injectors. Now how much pressure exactly? It's going to vary based on your car's make and model, but for the sake of argument, we'll say 60 psi. Now the way your fuel injectors work is that when you turn the key to the run or start position, or on some makes and models, the on or start position, you send constant battery voltage through a fuse to all your fuel injectors. And this fuse is usually found inside your under the hood fuse box. So here on this little diagram, you can see number 16. It says injectors and it has a 10 amp fuse, which in our fuse box would make this fuse our injector fuse. And the way your fuel injectors are turned on and off is through the ground wire, which is connected to your ECM or your electronic control module, which on this car is conveniently located right here. So as your engine is running and as the load increases and decreases on your engine, your ECM controls the pulse width on the ground side to each fuel injector. And the amount of time ground is supplied to each fuel injector is very precise and also very fast. We're talking milliseconds. And that's where this fuel injector tester comes in. This is going to allow us to supply both ground and voltage for an exact and precise amount of time to each fuel injector. Alright, enough talking now. Let me show you how you can actually perform the testing procedures. Alright, so first we'll cover a couple of ways you can tell whether you have a completely shot or dead fuel injector. So for the first method, you're going to need a multimeter. Any basic cheap multimeter will do. Doesn't have to be a fancy one. So what we're going to do is basically measure these injectors for resistance. So first thing you want to do is obviously turn on your multimeter. Then switch the dial on your multimeter to the ohms setting, which is ohms being the unit of measurement for resistance. And where you want to set this to is going to be the next setting above the measurement you're expecting to measure for resistance on these fuel injectors. Now, they're usually not going to be that high, like these injectors, I believe to be just below 20. So we're going to put them on 200. So next, you would basically just go down the line and measure the fuel injectors for resistance. So on this one, we got 15.5, 15.6. This one we got pretty much the same exact thing. 15.5 again for this one as well. You don't even need to know the exact resistance your fuel injectors are supposed to have. You can just pretty much compare the readings you get. And if you have one or two that stand out when you compare them to the other ones, those are going to be your bad fuel injectors. Now the second way you can tell whether you have a bad fuel injector or not is to basically listen to the fuel injectors as the engine is operating. And in order to do that, you'll need a long screwdriver like this, or a mechanic stethoscope like this one. And by the way, if I have any female viewers watching these videos, I just want to say, I ain't no gynecologist, but if you ever need a second opinion, I'll see what I can do. That was uncalled for and probably too much, but I'm keeping it. At least I didn't say F Donald Trump. Alright, so back to the lecture at hand. First thing you want to do is to start your vehicle. And then while the engine is running, you want to go around with your stethoscope or your long screwdriver and touch the base of every fuel injector. Just make sure your stethoscope or screwdriver is not touching anything else. That way you don't mix up any other noises with the ticking noise of your fuel injectors. And again, the fuel injector that sounds worse than the others is usually going to be your bad fuel injector, especially if you have a misfire code for the cylinder for which that fuel injector is for. Alright, so those were some things you could do to find a dead fuel injector, but not necessarily a dirty fuel injector. Alright, so in order to find dirty fuel injectors, first thing you need to do is to locate your fuel pressure port, which is usually going to be on your fuel rail. Remove the little plastic cap, grab your fuel pressure gauge, and with the right adapter, screw it onto your fuel pressure port. Make sure you get it nice and tight so that there are no leaks, okay? Alright, so next you want to look in your repairs manual and find out the fuel pressure that you're supposed to have for your car's make and model. For this car, which is a 2004 Saturn Ion, the fuel pressure should be between 50 to 60 psi. So next we're going to get in the car and turn the key to the on position and make sure our fuel pump is priming and then observe our reading. Alright, here we go. Alright, so as you can see, we got actually exactly 50 psi right now, which is within spec. Also, I should mention that you might want to cycle your key to the on and off position a couple of times, especially if you did any repairs in your fuel system recently, so that you get all the air out. Also, with the key in the on position and the engine not running, your fuel pressure in your rail might decrease a little bit. That's normal. You just want to make sure you wait a couple of minutes until this reading stabilizes before you go on to the next step. Now, if your fuel pressure is not within spec, no matter how many times you cycle your keys on and off, then your problem is not your fuel injectors. It's more than likely going to be your fuel pump that's on its way out, but it could be other things, and we'll save diagnosing those issues for a separate video though. Alright, so what we're going to do next is to undo the connector for our fuel injector. So on this harness, we first need to pull out on this green safety tab, like this, and then we press on this black tab and then pull out the connector. You know what, I'm going to completely remove this thing. Now it should come out easier. There. Alright, now if you want to check the wire integrity to your fuel injectors and also make sure that you're getting both the ground signal and you have power at your fuel injector, what you'll need to do is to grab yourself a test light and connect it to ground. And with the key in the on position, one of these should have constant power, as we talked about earlier. So it's not the first pin, so it has to be this one. There you go. There you have it. Now, if you don't have power to your fuel injectors, the first thing you should check is the fuse for your fuel injectors. And if your fuse is good and you do have power at your fuse, then your problem is in the wiring from your fuse to your fuel injectors. Now, in order to test the ground wire for our injector, we get our test light again, and this time we connect it to our battery positive. Next, we would get in our car, start the engine, and then connect our test light to the ground wire on our connector, and then we should see our test light flash. Alright, so there, I got the test light connected to our ground wire, and as you can see, it is flashing. So there, we just verified that we're indeed getting a fuel injector signal, and also that our ground wire is in good condition. So here comes the fun part. You grab your fuel injector tester, you connect one end of it to battery positive and a good ground, and the other end of it to the 2 pins for your fuel injector. Make sure you have good contacts with the pins for your fuel injector. And double check your ground with a test light if you're using a chassis ground as well. Alright, so on our injector tester, as you can see, we got 4 different pulse modes. We got a short, medium, long, and continuous mode. And those modes are going to basically simulate the amount of time a ground is supplied to your fuel injector when the engine is running. Now, I usually go with simply the second mode, which is a medium mode. And now when we hit this pulse button, ground is supplied to our fuel injector, completing a circuit, opening our fuel injector, and then as a result, we should see a fuel pressure drop. And what you need to do is to precisely measure the pressure drop in your fuel system. So as you can see, we got exactly 44 psi here. So now I'm going to hit the pulse button on our injector tester. And there. And we dropped all the way down to precisely 25 psi. So there, that was exactly 19 psi of pressure drop in the medium pulse mode for this cylinder, which is cylinder number 4. Next, all you have to do is to repeat this for all your fuel injectors, and you do have to start at exactly 44 psi and then measure how much of a pressure drop each fuel injector has when it's activated with the medium pulse mode on this fuel injector tester. And all your fuel injectors should have almost the same exact amount of pressure drop. Now, if they're only off by 1 psi, then that's usually okay, but you should double check your work. But if they're off by 2 psi or more, then that's a definite sign of a clogged or dirty fuel injector. Now here's something I just thought of. See, on a lot of cars, you don't have easy access to the connectors for all your fuel injectors. On this car, we have easy access to this cylinder number 4 and maybe for cylinder number 1, but 2 and 3 are pretty hard to get to. So how can we hack the system given what we know? Well, it's kind of easy. First, you'll need to get the wiring diagram for your car's fuel injection system. So here's the wiring diagram for this car. Here's our fuse. We got battery positive coming into this fuse, and then from on here goes to each and every single fuel injector on this car. But we're actually interested in the ground wires, and more specifically, where they go and exactly which pin on the connector for your ECU they connect to. So we got pin 56 and 57 for cylinders 1 and 2, and 77 and 78 for cylinders 3 and 4. And this is obviously your switch, and this one is obviously a broomstick, which is next to your ECM. All right, kidding aside, that's a ridiculous symbol for a ground, but that's what they mean, and this is where your ECM grounds your fuel injectors. So you guessed it, the plan is to find the corresponding pin for whatever fuel injector we want to test, and then connect this grounding wire from our fuel injector tester to that pin, and then supply ground using our fuel injector tester. And then of course, see how much of a fuel pressure drop we have for that injector. Now this of course requires somewhat of an easy access to your ECU and wiring diagrams. And also I should mention that if you decide to go this route, you should do the test for all your fuel injectors at the ECM. Don't do some of them at the injector and then some at the ECM. Do all of them at the same place. Alright, so next we're going to remove our connector that goes to our ECM. Alright, next we need to remove this plastic cover because we need to back probe the grounding wires for our fuel injectors. So this goes back in. Alright, so back to the wiring diagram. Let's say we want to test fuel injector number 3. As you can see, this is going to be pin number 77 on the connector that goes to our ECM. And that wire is going to be pink and black. So here, as you're hopefully able to see, that's pin number 77. This last one is pin 80. So if you just go back, that's going to make it our wire. It's the same color. And as you can see, it's back probed. And again, as you can see, I got it connected to the ground wire for a fuel injector tester. And the power wire out of our fuel injector tester can hang loose. Just make sure it's not touching a ground, a chassis ground or something. So once more, we would cycle our key on and off to get some fuel pressure in our fuel rail. All right, so once again, we're going to test this on mode 2. And when I hit this pulse button, this should work. Oh yeah. All right, in anticipation of this test to see whether it works, I forgot to write down the before and after fuel pressure on the gauge. But that's okay, because there's nothing wrong with this car. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. Plus, there's a lot of YouTube experts out there that are gonna definitely let me know if I did anything wrong, I'm sure. All right, so that was awesome, I know. But now let's say you found a dirty fuel injector and you want to try to clean it before you go out and buy it, because maybe it's very expensive or maybe it's even simply too hard to find. So here's what you'll need to do. Grab your fuel injector and remove the 2 O-rings that go at the 2 ends of it. Then get yourself an assortment set of marine heat shrink tubing. Make sure the set you buy has a heat activated adhesive lining on the inside of it. That's very important for what we're about to do. And of course, get yourself a can of carb cleaner. This is going to be both our cleaning agent and the source of our pressure. All right, so the idea is to run pressurized carb cleaner through our fuel injector. So we need to find a way to connect that into the top of that, and that seal needs to be airtight. So that's where the heat shrink tubing comes in, and in between each step down in size, starting from our fuel injector, we're going to put smaller and smaller rubber hoses until we get to our carb cleaner. All right, so first we'll start off by securing this larger rubber hose to the top of our fuel injector using this clamp. There we go. And next we'll grab a corresponding piece from our heat shrink tubing set, which is going to fit over this rubber hose. And then using a lighter, we're going to shrink this tubing, at the same time activate the adhesive lining on the inside of it. Now you are going to be working around carb cleaner, so you want to be very careful, and also if you can, just use a soldering iron, which is going to be a lot safer because it doesn't include, fire. All right, I should do it for this end. Now the diameter of this thing is simply too small, so what we're going to do is actually put some heat shrink tubing around it, then heat that up, and that should bring up the diameter of this thing. You do want to be very careful because you can burn and destroy the straw itself, and then you have to go get another one. And here you have it, folks, our $10 fuel injector cleaner. Alright, so here's a look at our setup. Got the fuel injector here. Got it connected to our fuel injector tester, and I'm going to be using that to activate our fuel injector and then run carb cleaner through it. You don't need this. You can just do it manually by touching one of these alligator clips to your battery source. And of course, you need a battery source. Got a 12-volt battery here. Alright, so first we'll activate our fuel injector and then start spraying carb cleaner. There we go. I don't know if you guys can see this. It's spraying. Here, I'm going to get you guys a close-up shot so you can see this. There you go. You can see it better now. That's pretty cool. Alright, now let's try this on the short pulse mode. See how it looks like. There you go. That's not bad. And the medium pulse mode. There you have it. And the third long pulse mode. That was pretty cool. And the next step should be to backflush your fuel injector. You simply remove it, flip it around, reinstall it, and then run carb cleaner through it again, and that should backflush it and help clean all the varnish out of it. Now, a test you can do to see whether you're able to clean your fuel injector or not is to simply reinstall it back on your fuel rail, connect your pressure lines back to your fuel rail, and then connect your fuel pressure gauge back to your fuel rail, cycle your key, and then run your injector tester, and then compare your results to what it was before. If you made any improvements, then you have cleaned your fuel injectors. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do me a favor and share this video on your favorite social network, and also consider checking out these other related videos, of which I put links to on this side of the screen that you can click on. There'll also be links in the description box down below as well. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.